Hi, I'm Benjamin Lawson, and this is Hoosier Homies. We're a podcast that cover controversial issues and complex topics. This season, we'll be examining Trump's tariffs, AI in the workforce, the blockchain, and several other important topics. I'm looking forward to you getting in the conversation with us. In this episode, I sit down with friend of the pod, Myles Lewis Alexander, CEO of Farpoint Global, to discuss the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, the war with Iran, and Trump's economy. This episode was recorded on Thursday, April 16th, literally hours before Iran declared it would be reopening the strait in light of the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire. We'll be keeping an eye on what's happening in the region, and we'll be doing our best to keep you informed. As always, I hope you enjoy watching, listening, or however you're ingesting this content as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. Take care. Welcome to Hoosier Homies. My name is Benjamin Lawson. I'm joined with the CEO of Farpoint Global, Myles Lewis Alexander, for yet another interview. Myles, thanks again for taking the time to join us.
Hey, of course. Good to see you again, man.
Always good to see you, my brother.
I've been enjoying what you got on the channel. Watched Erica and Andrew's interviews. Those were great.
Hey, yo, Andrew's interview is going to be dropping pretty soon. You were lucky you got the rough cut.
I got the rough cut. Yeah, you did send me the link. That's true. I didn't watch it on YouTube. But
that's what you get for being a friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod. Yep.
So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Strait of Hormuz, the war in Iran, Trump's economy, and then basically that's it. There are a few other things that came up in the last 24-hour news cycle that we can cut if you're not comfortable talking about.
I don't even know what we're talking about. We can see if
the Swalwell Gonzalez debacle in Congress.
Sure, I'm always happy to chat. I don't know if that's really my area of competency, but that's never stopped me from talking about something before.
Well, again, if we sound like idiots, we'll just cut it.
There we go. Okay.
So let's jump right in. So right now, economically, where are we as a nation with regards to international relations with Iran?
Where are we with it? Okay, that's a really easy question and also a really difficult question at the same time.
So do the hard one first and the easy one second.
I'm just gonna say the easy one is easy. We have it's horrible. There's nothing there. No. We, for a long time, I think U.S. foreign policy has wanted to do something significant with the reigning regime in Iran. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, this is not something new to this Trump presidency. It wasn't new to Biden, the other Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton. It just goes on, right? Ever since the Shah got kicked out, right? Mm-hmm. I think the United States has been wishing that it could somehow intervene. I think for a long period of time, even the hawks in the U.S. government probably realized that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I think there was a lot of understanding about how large Iran was as a country, not just geographically and population size, but militarily. Its proximity to the Strait of Hormuz, its proximity and its amount of weapons to other U.S. allies in the region. And I'm not just talking about Israel. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about Jordan, UAE. So it's always been I think on the wish list, and we wanted to do something. We always really sort of stopped short at large scale military action, right? A lot of what we did in the past was similar to the Obama nuclear deal, right? There was a series of sanctions and trying to build a coalition of other nations to try and isolate Iran in the region. Where we are now is all diplomacy has basically broken down. Like we used to communicate with Iran. There were periods of time when Iran would allow weapons inspectors in. There was, somewhat regular communication between, you know, U.S. and U.S. aligned powers and the Iranian government, whether it was good communication or bad communication. Um, that is for the most part gone when we decided to I basically start a war with Iran, right? And so where we are economically, it's not like where we are. I wouldn't frame it as like where we are economically with Iran. It's like where is the United States economically because of the decision to strike Iran in the fashion that we did.
Yeah.
And I would say at least, and I would find it pretty hard for anyone to really disagree with this, at least over the short term, we are in a worse place economically because we struck Iran than we were before.
Yeah.
And I say short term because we just look at some of the numbers, right? I mean, we look at estimates on how much money we're spending per day by having, our aircraft carriers there, how much money we've spent in munitions, how many, 50 to $100 million airplanes have we lost? Not a lot, but still a few, right? That all like is on the ledger somewhere, right? It all adds up. Then we look at like oil and what has happened to the price of oil, right?
Well, I mean,
so
you look at the picture you sent me this morning.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
so I think it's pretty clear over the short term that we are in a worse place economically than before we struck. And even President Trump has admitted like that there will be short-term economic pain. The people that are in favor of this is that they're basically just saying the short-term economic pain will be worth it because long-term oil will revert back to the mean. We'll have a more stable Middle East. A terrorist regime will be out of that the juice is worth the squeeze. It is just, I think what a lot of people that aren't quite so, I don't like to use the phrase gung ho, but aren't quite so excited about military action in that region are thinking is they're having a hard time seeing exactly how we get to whatever that end situation is that's going to make us economically better off, more militarily secure. Because right now everything seems to be still, very much in the air.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, other than gas prices, fertilizer prices, food prices, because and correct me if I'm wrong, the Strait of Hormuz is only responsible for 20%.
Yeah, it's about 20% of global oil.
Yeah, but that's only oil. We're not talking fertilizer. We're not talking food. We're not talking other consumable goods, right?
Right. So there's a couple interesting things about oil as a commodity. One is and I'm going to sort of like give how I would say if I was in a boardroom offering strategic advice to our clients, and I'll explain the stuff. But we'll call it the demand is very inelastic and it is priced at the margin, meaning the demand for oil doesn't really change. So and like I feel like I already hear people in the comments being, well, like cyclically oil, like the demand for oil does change. But if you take the whole year and average oil consumption out over a year, and then you look at like the year before, the year before that, the year before that, the global demand for oil basically stays about the same. And that makes sense, right? Because container ships are basically shipping the same amount on average every year. The exceptions would be like a COVID or something like that. But on average, they're shipping the same amount. On average, there's about the same amount of airplanes traveling. On average, people are like consuming the same amount of like toothbrushes and toothpaste. On average, like the consumption of things that petroleum helps create or move stays about the same. Right. So that's what we mean when we say that the demand is inelastic. The example of like elastic demand would be like luxury goods tend to be very elastic. Because when the economy is doing well, people tend to buy more luxury goods. When there's a perception the economy is doing worse, people tend to buy less. So that demand is elastic. Oil is inelastic. And the price at the margin means that because the demand is so inelastic, even a relatively small shock to supply, right? Because demand isn't going to change. That relatively small shock to supply can create very large swings in the price because the demand is kind of like fixed, right? So that's why you basically can have, what started off as like we all thought this was just going to be like a week or something like that of bombing in Iran, leads to a giant increase in oil prices, right? Because demand is so inelastic. And then the other thing about oil is it is in everything.
No,
like
it really is.
the plastic for my water, oil, right? Yeah. Your toothbrush and your toothpaste, your plastic bag. And then anytime you're moving anything, there you go, your phone case, right? Anytime you're moving anything, right? So whether it's, t-shirts or rebar across the ocean, oil, right? Whether you're moving on a truck, oil, right?
Yep.
Whether you're flying in an airplane, oil, like it reaches, there's very few things that we interact with on a regular basis that doesn't have some type of petroleum component.
Yeah, and I mean, if we think about this, which is so wild, almost 100 years ago, there is almost no plastics involved in anything, yet oil production was still a major component in our daily lives, right? Even, I mean, the invention of the automobile it basically spurred that, right?
Yeah.
And from there, it just took off. It just became part of, like you said, it became part of everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why the shock to this commodity in particular is so, and let me give like just an example. We had someone reach out to us. They're not like officially a client yet, but the problem was one of their components to the product that they manufacture and sell is a petroleum based product, and their existing supplier of that sort of sub product canceled their orders because because of the limited amount of petroleum that they were foreseeing that they were going to be able to take in. They sort of triaged their existing clients on like what product makes them the most amount of money, and they were then still going to like sell it to those people. But his product was this company's product was relatively, that component at least was relatively like a low margin product. So they just canceled his order altogether. So now he can't. He's scrambling right now to find an alternate supplier. Right. This isn't a product that someone would think. I'm not at liberty to say what it is, but it's not something that would like naturally think like, oh, the war in Iran is definitely going to like impact this, but it does. It permeates everything. Like we had, we're in the middle of like renegotiating a bunch of flooring contracts because your like sort of plastic laminate floor is petroleum based.
Yeah.
Right. And so that price goes up a couple cents per square foot. And that's a significant for a low margin product. That's significant.
But
so it adds up. And then you also think because of how critical, right? Because of how critical oil is as an input for many different things, there are a lot of contracts, especially international contracts, that one of the clauses within the contract for the contract to be valid is that Brent will be within a certain band.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So you can say like a purchase contract or something like that, in which you're buying X or selling X internationally. Very often there will be a clause, right, within the contract that the contract is void if Brent is not within this certain band.
Okay, that's one of the
questions. The contract might say like between, contract valid between 75 and 83 bucks a barrel.
Okay, so this is my ignorance. I don't know what Brent is. So can you explain that for me? Because I know that if
Sure.
I don't know, I'm sure that, well, I mean, that sounds arrogant as fuck, but
No. It's so yeah. So there's oil is a global commodity, and there basically needed to be some way to track what the bid and ask is for what like the price is globally for
mhm.
a barrel of oil. Brent actually comes from the Brent oil field, which is in the North Atlantic. Um,
Okay.
I forget when people started using Brent. Someone's gonna have to like look that up and drop it in
Drop
the
it
comments.
in the comments, kids.
Drop it in the comments, or Nico can put it in down here, like right here.
Yeah.
But basically, Brent is the dollar amount priced in US dollars of what about two-thirds of global oil is trading. So think about it as like when you see like the Dow Jones, right? And the Dow
Hmm.
Jones is at X amount of dollars, right? That's Brent. Brent is basically what the price of oil is
Thank you.
globally. The other one that you hear about is WTI, which is West Texas Intermediate.
Now
And
that number, or that
that's
I've heard of. So
yeah, that's basically the other third. Um, and that's basically what it costs a barrel of oil, a US barrel of oil to be delivered to in some city in Oklahoma. Again, please put that down below. I'm not an oil trader. Um, but it's
and the
basically the
only reason
cost
I
of a
think I know that,
US. I'm sorry?
oh, I think the only reason I know that is from the Paramount series Landman with Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh, okay. So there you go.
So
You can probably talk more about WTI than I can.
nope, not
But
even nope. That's it. That's all I
those
got.
are basically the two main benchmarks for oil.
Okay.
Brent is basically what the entire world uses, and US based companies will look at Brent and WTI. They usually always move in the same direction. So, like if Brent is going up, WT is also going up. If they're going down, they're both going down. WTI, I feel like tends to always be a couple bucks cheaper than Brent.
Okay.
So like if Brent's at like 90, WTI might be like at 87.
Okay.
Um, but those are basically the two main ways that you track the price of oil.
Got it. Got it. Got it. No, so that's really helpful, and I think that's going to be really helpful for the listeners too, who don't know, especially again, it sounds really arrogant when I say, since I don't know, I'm sure other people don't. Like that's again, I'm listeners, I'm really not that arrogant.
No, but if it's one of those things that like if you are not if you're not an energy trader or in a business that is sort of like directly impacted by those figures, whether it's shipping or manufacturing or whatever, like yeah, I mean you're not like looking at the price of bread every day. And also like most of the time it's boring. It's stable. Like most of the time, you're not seeing massive swings in these numbers because most of the time, the geopolitical risk is like fairly low.
Mhm.
And they all just kind of like hover around the same price. There might be a swing of, a couple tenths of a percent here and there. But I mean, for the most part, it's fairly stable. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the 10-year treasury. For the most part, there's not like wild swings, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah. Well, so this leads me into my next sub question regarding like what we need to be, because I do think you answered the easy and the hard question of where are we internationally in terms of economic relations with Iran. So the next question I have is, what should Americans really be focusing on with this sort of one uh, current event in the Strait of Hormuz, and then what should we be sort of not focusing on? What should we be and what should be sort of like what should we be ignoring or like sort of putting
Huh.
like as not as important as others?
Interesting. I don't. So okay, I'm going to start with what we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, yeah.
We should all be really. worried about escalation.
Agreed.
Um, you know, the majority of the story being told here is a war story, right? Of course, right?
Yeah.
The US and Israel are like dropping bombs, and Iran is launching missiles and blowing up bases, and you know, some innocent people are dying, some military people are dying. It's being very much covered as a war. Um, I do think that there's a deeper component to what's going on, which is a real, and I think it's morphed into this. It was not about this when it started, but it is starting to morph into a currency war, and sort of what the future of, and this is part of the reason why I'm paying so close attention, but basically what the future of international trade looks like.
And we're definitely going to get to that too.
We'll get to that, yeah. But so I think we really need to be worried that we're playing a very dangerous game. We are dealing with perhaps one of the most important limited resources on the planet that has global ramifications. And there are a lot of countries that aren't as insulated as we are to the Strait of Hormuz being closed. You've got like a lot of countries in the Middle East. You've got one very big country in East Asia. And there's only going to be so much tolerance for a certain amount of disruption, over a set period of time.
Yeah.
Meaning, I guess I'm just being coy, meaning like you're only going to be able to mess with Chinese oil supply for so long before China feels like they really need to get involved. And my hope is that the current administration isn't looking for a hot war with China. But my hope is that they're realizing that just as the US will seek to defend its interests, China will as well at some point. I think everyone should be hoping that it doesn't get to that point, that there is an off ramp and a resolution before larger powers start to feel threatened. And then it spirals into something that is far more complex and far more difficult to unwind. And that would really be, US and China's interests being directly opposed to one another. Right now, we basically had, although we some people will claim that China is our enemy. What's funny is I've never met a single Chinese person that thinks the way that Americans do in the inverse. We have sort of been told that China is this threat, and we should not be ignoring China, but for the most part, our interests have aligned for the most part.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
If China succeeds, the US will succeed. If the US will succeed, China will succeed. But we are starting to get a little close to their sandbox. China has come out earlier this week when Trump announced his blockade, basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, but that China has a 25-year energy agreement, a legal 25-year energy agreement with the Iranian regime when it comes to their oil. And that it is not the place for, they didn't say the United States, but it's not the place for other powers to interfere with that agreement.
But they're basically saying that it is nobody else should, right?
So, what I think what China is basically trying to say is, and I'm sure they probably have said this in back channels, we will give you a certain amount of time that we are okay with you disrupting our oil supply. But after that, we are going to be wanting to get our oil.
But that makes sense.
Right, it does. And now, look, it also makes sense for the U.S. that is actively engaged in conflict with Iran to, not have Iran get funded. Because, when China buys the oil, they're giving Iran, their economic allies, right? They trade together, right? I mean,
Right.
that Iran's single largest trading partner is China, right? So I can understand from the U.S. perspective, it's like, no, we would, I think what the U.S. is trying to do by cutting off sale to China is hurt Iran. I don't think they're actually looking to pick a fight with China, but at some point, right? I don't know. At some point, I think the impatience will grow.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's a domino effect almost. Like you can't, to me, this feels like you can't have your cake and eat it too, almost. In the sense of the word, or in the sense
Right.
of,
And this is what told me before I read the New York Times article about how the New York Times had this great piece on how this decision was made. I don't know if you've read it, but on how the decision to strike Iran was made. And
no,
it
I
is
have not.
clear. So yeah, I mean, it's clear from that piece and from just like looking at how the chess pieces were playing out that the Trump
Mhm.
administration did not think that they would still be here. So I don't think they like gamed it out to the point where we are going to have a blockade and we are going to be perhaps threatening to interdict Chinese vessels with
Mhm.
oil that they purchased.
Mhm.
Right. And then, like, what happens if China sends their navy to escort their vessels in international water that bought Iranian oil? Like that all of a sudden starts spiraling out to like a problem that I don't think the Trump administration was planning on having to face.
Right.
I think Trump here is I think a kind read is he is like a victim of his own success. He had a very successful bombing campaign against Iran over the summer. We
Yes.
can go even before that. Trump administration won when he assassinated their top general.
Yeah.
There was basically no retaliation,
Yeah.
right? Then we look at the strikes over the summer, no
Yeah. Which
retaliation, right?
decimated the nuclear
Right.
program. Right.
Then we look at what he did in Venezuela. I would argue wild success in Venezuela, right? From a U.S. strategic standpoint, right? And so
Yeah.
I think he was going in, and I think he was thinking that they could probably do the same thing in Iran. And what the New York Times piece highlights is the series of conversations that the Trump administration had with the Netanyahu administration, including a very critical meeting in which Netanyahu flew to DC and actually met with Trump and Rubio and Hegseth um, in the Situation Room and basically laid out the argument of why they should strike, why they should strike Iran, and why they should strike Iran now. And that all was really all predicated on the idea that it was going to be a quick thing, right? There was already all of this like turmoil and like distress in the streets with the uprisings and all of these innocent Iranian civilians being slaughtered by their own regime. I think he thought really that he was going to go in, do a couple strategic strikes, take out, some of the top leadership, even Khomeini, right? And that he was given a list that Mossad generated of, likely people to sort of like fill that power vacuum. And Khomeini's son was not on that list, right? It was like sort of best case scenario, right?
Mhm.
People
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
more sympathetic to U.S. interests and Israeli interests, far more liberal rulers, blah blah blah. But like it never happened, right? The
Yeah.
uprising never happened.
Yeah. It
So
feels
I
like
think
it's gone horribly wrong. Like
this
there's
was not planned, right?
yeah.
Like Trump was planning on like maybe a couple days, and then he was out.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to be a little more serious than what happened in Venezuela. And that's what I mean by I think like he was a victim of his own success. And part of the reason why it looks like the goalposts keep changing because there's been so much mission creep here.
Mm-hmm.
And, Trump is now at a point where like, I think he would like to very much leave. But the problem is if he leaves now, I would argue that Iran is definitely weaker militarily, but from a strategic standpoint, I think it's actually stronger. And I think you can have those two paths diverge, right? Like militarily, of course, right? Their navy's at the bottom of the sea. The Air Force is depleted. I mean, you can see it by the type of, aerial exercises that we're doing in Iran, these low flies, everything. Like we realize that the majority of their defenses are completely gone, right? But what we have showed the world is that because of geography, right? Iran with very little can cause a major disruption to the West.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. I mean, it feels to me like I know that we haven't officially put boots on the ground, but I fear that that's going to be the next step. And I fear that that this is going to be our next Iraq.
That's where I'm going to disagree with you, and I think this might be my hot take. So I think what you got here right now is Trump is stuck between Scylla and Charybdis, right? Rock and a hard place.
We're gonna go see the Odyssey. Can't wait to see that.
I know, there we go. Right. So my more classical education is coming out by that, but so what is currently happening is unsustainable. And I mean currently happening, I'm not talking about this like temporary ceasefire, although this is also unsustainable because there's a blockade. But the sort of like bombing and aircraft carriers there, like it's just going to keep gas prices way too high, and that will force the United States into a recession. There's no way about it. So he can't keep doing what he's doing, right? He does not have the political leverage to put boots on the ground. And when I say boots on the ground, maybe we need to clarify, I don't mean SEAL Team 6, goes in for 2 hours to take someone out or get a piece of information and leaves. Usually when I hear boots on the ground, it is like infantry, right? Not like a targeted operation by special forces. Right.
I mean tens of thousands of like
I don't think that's happening.
Like an occupation.
I mean, you look at the people even within his own party, right? And I mean, they've been, even people that are very pro-Trump are very anti-that, because let's remember, Trump campaigned on no new wars. His whole thing was that Harris, if you voted for Biden and or Harris, right? We were going to go to war with Iran. There were going to be boots on the ground in Iran. That was his whole thing. He's always been against, whether it was Iraq, Afghanistan, these endless wars in the Middle East. He doesn't want to be there. His voters don't want to be there. His fellow Republicans, right, on his side of the aisle in Congress don't want him to be there. I think that's not going to happen. The other problem is, though, he can't leave now. For sure, he can't leave now. Because if he leaves now, right, Iran will institutionalize control over the Strait of Hormuz. And what that looks like now is the weakening of the petrodollar.
So let's hold on the petrodollar, and let me push back on you really quick.
Please.
Because I like your take, and I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. But just seeing the administration in the past, how long has Trump 2 been in office? Less than
since January of last year.
Yeah, right? I don't do math. Get in the comments and tell me the math. But like,
it's just 12 plus 4.
Yeah, 16. Great. Okay. Yeah. So the past 16 months, I mean, the man has lied to us basically every day for every part of this term and his last term. I have a hard time believing anything that comes out of his mouth. And I know that, I know you and I see differently on this. And I know you don't love Trump. I know you don't. but like I have such a hard time buying like his whole thing of like not starting a new forever war.
No, because
Uh,
this is the thing. This is where I'm going to push back, right?
yeah, please.
You know, you gotta play the man, right? And Trump is not an ideologue.
Okay.
Trump is not an ideologue, right? You know, he's not Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, if he was president, there'd already be troops on the ground.
Oh, dude,
If Pete Hegseth
he'd
was
be dropping
president,
nukes already
there'd already be
if
troops on the
Graham was
ground,
yeah.
right? Trump is not an ideologue. Trump doesn't give a shit about the internal politics of Iran or the region. Trump cares about himself first and foremost,
Yeah, that's
right?
very
He's
yeah.
always thinking about himself and his where his incentives and motivations and wants and desires align with the US's. I think he can be then a very forceful and effective leader. You know, the questions are always that I usually have is like when those interests diverge. I think that's when we get into a little bit of issues about like Trump as the president of the United States. But what I'm saying is he has never been an interventionist. He's not a neocon.
Right.
He's not.
No.
What he is looking for um, is honestly like is a way to leave that isn't going to be read as all out failure.
Okay. No, I can see that. I can see that. Now, can I push back one more time before we change
You can
subjects?
push back as many times as you want.
Now, when you say Trump is looking at like, and I think you said what America wants, would you agree that the argument would be for a certain sect of America, and maybe not others, um, particularly not necessarily his base and not necessarily his donors, but like his super donors, maybe.
I don't think anyone the list of people that benefit from this situation right now is very small.
Oh, I agree.
That's what makes this unique.
Yes.
So like let's go through the people that I think are benefiting right now. Um, Russia is benefiting right now
Oh, clearly.
because
Yes.
Russia had some sanction relief so that they can sell their oil to try and keep oil prices down,
Well, and I
right?
wonder if those sanctions are going to stay lifted.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that would be a tough order if this corrects itself. Because again, like Trump always could have like lifted them earlier, but I think Trump is grown a little more disillusioned with Putin after their meeting in Alaska.
Yeah,
But
true.
so you got Putin. Um, you might have a very small amount of oil producers in the U.S. that
Hmm.
enjoy the higher price point that they can now sell into the international market. And you might have like a couple defense contractors that might be seeing a little bit of a boost.
Hmm.
But again, most of those defense contractors, right? I mean, like they're already making money hand over fist. They already
Right.
have these contracts that are like long dated for supplying a certain amount of munitions or airplanes or something like that. So I really think part of the reason why Trump is so eager to get out, right? And he
Hmm.
tells you, this is my thing about Trump. Like, it's funny because you say like Trump lies all the time. Like he does, and he also doesn't. He also is like incredibly truthful if you know how to read him right.
I guess I
By
just
the
don't.
fact because by the fact that he keeps saying like, oh, we won, oh, we won, we won, we won. He's telling you he wants out.
But winning and wanting out aren't the same thing.
Well, he's not gonna take a giant L.
No.
So that's why he keeps floating things like perhaps the Ayatollah and I will jointly control the Strait of Hormuz.
See, that's what I wanted to get to. I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for saying that.
He's trying to like pepper Iran with the things that he would be willing to walk away with and be able to call a win.
Okay. No, go ahead. No, please. No, you go first.
So I was going to say, like, so if it was, let's just say like that's how this ends. Let's say how it ends is, there is a toll on all ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz, but it's paid in Trump coin. Ugh. Or it's paid in Bitcoin and the proceeds are split with the US. Trump will call that a win because he'll be like, look, we bombed their nukes, we got rid of their military, and now we have better relations with Iran. We both split the transit fee.
So I promised myself I'm not going to do my Trump accent on this episode, and I'm going to try my best not to, because I'll be honest, it's really good.
Oh yeah.
It's, all right, well, it's really good. It's really good.
Is it huge? Fantastic.
It's perfect.
No, so
anyway,
he's looking right. He's telling us every day that he wants out. He doesn't want to go back. I mean, look at this. Look at this ceasefire.
Yeah. So he's extended it to day 10. Now we're at day what? Where are we?
I believe it expires April 22nd.
Okay, so next Wednesday is the expiration. Yeah. Do you feel like that's going to extend out past the 22nd?
I do.
Okay. What's your rationale behind that? And I know we're totally going off script at this point.
Well, it's my rationale is Trump clearly doesn't want to continue the bombing because Trump wants a negotiated exit. So he doesn't want to continue the bombing, right? Also, if he wanted to continue the bombing, he wouldn't have done the ceasefire. He would just continued still be bombing. Right.
Yeah.
It is in Iran's short-term interests to still have a cessation of bombing so that they can like rebuild, clear rubble, do all that kind of stuff in case they need to start back fighting again. So it's in both parties' interests to not on April 23rd start lobbing missiles again.
But at the same time, we have the nation of Israel not, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not complying with this ceasefire. Am I right?
I think over the past couple of days, they've paused. They didn't at the beginning, but also apparently it is because they were not part of the ceasefire negotiations.
That's what I meant.
Which, again, is another data point, which tells me that Trump wants out.
Interesting.
Because he's like, the guys that got me into this, that I listened to, that told me that this would go easy, right? I'm now...
They stuffed him. Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, it's Trump, right? He's clearly pissed and blah, 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 right? And I'm not like saying that there was like malicious intent on, on the part of like the Netanyahu administration or
I'll do that for you. That's okay.
Okay, so I don't know what like internally is happening there, but I think for very much he wanted to like just like no, like I am just going to do this thing, and Israel's going to listen. Very much like what he did with Gaza.
Yeah.
Right. When he tried to like negotiate the ceasefire thing, and then he got really upset. That was the whole they don't know what the F they're doing. Right. Because Israel kept, I believe it was like Israel that kept striking, and then Hamas started launching again, and then like re-kicked up again, So, I think that's again, all of the evidence to me points to the fact that Trump is looking to get out, which is partly why I say of those three impossible things right now, like sending in ground troops, he's definitely not going to do.
Okay.
Because everything seems to like point to he doesn't want to send ground troops. So we're left with
that's awesome.
Status quo or some type of negotiated end to this conflict, right? We look at status quo. I believe the status quo is not sustainable. He does not want to be impeached. He desperately wants to try and win the midterms, which means Putting troops on the ground means he definitely loses the midterms, which means he definitely gets impeached. Now, whether the impeachment ends up being, whether he ends up successfully being impeached is another whole ballgame. But
Right.
like he's very much has his eye to the midterms because he knows what that means, what the danger is there for his administration.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's not being a lame duck, it's impeachment.
Right. Right.
Right. So we know
because
that
he doesn't want to be held accountable for the myriad of things he's
right. So we've
Yeah.
got ground troops will lead him to be, to lose the midterms. Status quo will lead to recession, which will lead him to losing the midterms. The only thing that he has is some type of negotiated exit that he can spin to his supporters and the people in the middle as a giant win.
So let me ask you this: after 16 hours of negotiations in Pakistan, um, JD Vance called called quits, right? Do you feel that, because again, Vance probably didn't do this on his own. He was probably ordered back by the president, and we can't really confirm that. But do you feel like this might have been a feint? Do you feel like this might have been Trump throwing Vance under the bus because he is what is considered the next candidate to take over after Trump is gone? And
Look, this is the thing.
Okay,
This is the
fire
thing.
away. Yeah, I love that. I love that you've got something loaded in the can and ready to go.
Vance is not the guy that's really doing these negotiations or is going to get it across the finish line.
Fire. Oh,
Right.
tell me
You got to
more,
look
tell
at
me more.
Witkoff and Kushner.
Okay. Oh.
Trump doesn't trust Vance. Trump doesn't like Vance.
He never liked Vance.
Right. So the people that he trusts with these negotiations is his son-in-law that he thinks very highly of, and Witkoff, who he thinks very highly of.
Yeah.
And he also has like tons of entanglements and business deals. And that shows the level of trust that he has in those two gentlemen.
Yeah.
I also think as negotiators, from what I have read and people that I have known that have like negotiated with and against those two individuals, they are very competent negotiators and deal makers. They definitely don't know what they're doing when it comes to Iran. So I think part of what happened that we need to make sure that if Witkoff, I would say if I were the president and I wanted Witkoff and I wanted Kushner to lead the negotiations, you got to make sure that they're definitely like armed by people that have the knowledge base to get them up to speed.
Oh yeah, they've got to have like an army
right.
of experts behind.
I think the reason why the first negotiations failed, that Witkoff and Kushner were leading, were not because Witkoff though and Kushner were like doing a bad job. It was because the decision was pretty much already made that they were going to strike Iran.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that a bunch of these guys were going to be in about the same place, and that was something that they didn't want to pass up, and they wanted to take them out.
Okay.
Right. Vance was requested by Iran.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Because they don't trust Witkoff and Kushner because they were negotiating with Witkoff and Kushner, and then they got struck. Okay. So Vance has to go. Vance has to be a failure. Vance has to leave to get Witkoff and Kushner back. This first round of talks was never meant to be the round that gets the deal. It was to just like, it was just to clear the chamber.
Well, if I remember correctly, I mean, even Obama's White House, when they did their Iran deal, or when they did their deal with Iran, that took 20 months of negotiations.
Right. Now, this is the thing, right?
Again, get in the comments. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Trump likes to move fast, right? What he likes to do is he likes to do frameworks of a deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Frameworks of a deal.
No, and like when you understand the world that like Trump comes from, like it makes sense. Right? Like it's billionaire developer is like, okay, I like talk to the landowner. We like sketch some terms out on like a dinner napkin, and now we'll let the lawyers figure out the details. But like we've got a deal, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
like a
yeah,
spit in the palm and a
we got a
handshake.
deal to buy it at like $15 a foot. We got ourselves a deal, and then the lawyers got to figure it out, and then it might almost fall apart, and then it comes together at the last minute, and um, so I think what we're going to see, I was not surprised that like the JD Vance thing um, ended with no deal.
Yeah.
Um, I think we're in for like a couple more trips to Pakistan or some other place with slowly roping back in Kushner and Witkoff.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, I mean, you're going to look at they, the big sticking point is going to be, I really feel like the biggest sticking point is going to be nuclear and the Strait
Yeah.
of Hormuz. And so the Strait of Hormuz is going to be fine if somehow there is some type of toll. Trump is just going to want some in on it.
Yeah, he's gonna want his pound of flesh.
Right. And then, they're going to have to, Iran's going to have to like allow someone to come in and dig some stuff out and get that out, some
Yeah,
portion of it.
yeah. And we're gonna talk about actually, do you want to just transition to talking about the nuclear materials? Because honestly, um, I am effectively ignorant on everything other than just the basic strikes and the fact that there's yellow cake basically 100 feet below a bunch of rubble.
Look, we can. I mean, I'm not a nuclear non-proliferation treaty expert or anything like that. But I mean,
But like, there's
like,
nuclear material in Iran, and if I remember correctly, before the strikes, like before the ceasefire, originally Iran had said something like, "We're willing to give our nuclear materials that you destroyed over the summer to." I don't, and again, comment if I'm wrong, and Miles, tell me if I'm wrong, to Russia, China, somebody else, just to make sure that they proliferated, um, as
yeah,
part of the ceasefire.
this, this is the thing, right? I mean, I don't think the West. So I should put it this way: like U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia, they don't want Iran to have a nuke. They don't want Iran to have a nuke. I think it is clear that Iran wants a nuke. Um,
I mean,
they also
when you're in
have
a
been.
rock fight, it doesn't help that you don't have any rocks.
Well, I mean, look, I think it's not difficult to see why Iran would want a nuke, right? I mean, you look at like how crazy North Korea behaves, but we've never gotten into it militarily with North Korea. Why? Because they have a nuke.
Yup. I mean,
If you're
yeah.
part of that club, there's a certain level of insurance that you have.
Yup. It's that
Um,
mutually assured destruction.
so for a lot of people, it's like we want to like I think for a lot of these nations, they want to get, especially if they don't have a benefactor above them that is protecting them. Like it's like Saudi Arabia doesn't have a nuke, and they say that they don't need a nuke. They have a defense pact with the United States of America.
Yup.
Now, Saudi Arabia has said that if Iran gets a nuke, that Saudi Arabia will start developing its own nukes. But I understand why Iran wants a nuke. I believe that Iran wants a nuke. I believe that they work in secret to develop that technology. I
Oh
also
yeah.
believe that when the heat really gets on them, that's when they say like, okay, well, we won't do any more of this research for 5 years. We won't enrich above this for 5 years, or whatever, because they're trying to get it without getting bombed, like what happened now.
Right.
Um, you know, Iran's going to have to give the U.S. something in terms of the nuke thing, because that has been the through line for why Trump did this.
True.
Because we cannot have a nuclear armed Iran. That's like the thing that they always say. We cannot have a nuclear armed Iran. We cannot have a nuclear armed Iran, right?
Well,
So
I
he's
think that
got to
goes
be
across
able to
the aisle.
say, right. So we've got to be able to say, right, that we've somehow delayed it another X amount of years. So Iran's got to give the US something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess is in return for that will be some type of joint control over the strait.
Yeah, I can see that, and it's one of those things where, I was doing my research over the past couple days before we sat down to record this, and the number that keeps popping up is, and we're using dollars here, and this might not be the right currency to be using in this instance, but putting $1 uh, uh, tax or $1 uh, like toll for every barrel oil per
Yeah.
ship, and that could basically equate to $2 million per ship.
Yeah,
per
because those
day.
ships hold roughly about 2 million barrels of oil. That's why you see the like $2 million toll. Yeah, it's a barrel, it's $1 per barrel.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad that I got that number right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a lot of fucking money.
Well, this is the thing, right? It's a lot of money and it's not, right? It is, if it were not, if the Strait of Hormuz was not considered a international waterway,
Mm-hmm.
I think the dollar a barrel could be argued as very reasonable. If you're going to use, if you're going to use like my land for something that you really want, and that is being sold for 90 or $80 a barrel, yeah, I'm going to tax you $1. Right? I think there's an easy business argument to be made for that, right?
Yeah.
Let me put it this way: like, 4 Point Global's margins are a lot more than $1 per 80.
No, that's
Right?
fair. That's fair. That's fair.
So the only reason why everyone is up in arms is that historically Iran has charged zero.
Right. Right.
They have the largest border with the strait. Their military is all over the strait historically, and they've charged it zero.
Well,
Right.
and they haven't. Are they the only major waterway that doesn't charge a toll? Like, I'm thinking Strait of Gibraltar. I'm thinking
No, so I mean, on that does not charge a toll.
does not
No,
charge a toll.
no, because they've got in and out of the Mediterranean. There's not a charge. I don't believe going through Istanbul there's a charge. I don't believe on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula there's a charge. But there are like some that charge, right? I mean, like, like you're not going through the Panama Canal without paying anything. Like most times you dock or something like that, there's a charge or a tax or a this or that. I mean, there's all kinds of when it would be unprecedented because it's considered an international waterway. That's what would make it unprecedented, because like the world has decided that it's an international waterway. And so, again, what I think is like we're probably going to see, if this negotiates, we're probably going to see that like not hold. That Iran is probably going to be able to charge something. It will probably be what is deemed like a reasonable fee. The US will probably split it. And it will probably be in, my guess is that, it will be in some denomination that is not the yuan.
Myles, you've talked about the petrodollar. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is the petrodollar in relation to the actual like US dollar?
Yeah, so
is there a difference?
This is, and we've kind of like we buried, I think, the lead in terms of what this conflict has turned into.
Okay.
Because I think earlier on I said something about how like this started as sort of like a regular military war, and we're now in a currency war.
Yeah, yeah.
Where we are now, and why we're at the stalemate now, and why we have the U.S. has a blockade, is because of the petrodollar. So in 71, right, we went off the gold standard. So it used to be that your dollar bill, right, was tied to some amount of gold,
Okay.
right? He was backed by gold. So instead of like carrying around a brick of gold, you can carry around these like loose little pieces of paper, and like that represents the gold, right?
Yeah.
We got off the gold standard, right? We then had just fiat currency. So the currency is just the currency, right? Controlled by the central bank. You
Right.
can increase the money supply, you can decrease the money supply. It doesn't really matter because it's not backed by anyone.
Right.
Well, the problem was that initially wasn't received very well, right?
I kind of remember
And
this from history.
in 74, Kissinger negotiated with the king of Saudi Arabia that all Saudi oil would be priced, purchased, and reinvested in US dollars. So, I mean, they would, when they give a price to the international community, no matter where you are, that price is in US dollars. If someone wants to buy it, they have to buy it in US dollars. And any profits that Saudi Arabia gains from said transaction has to be invested in US treasuries, right? I
Okay.
believe it was 1 year later that then the rest of the OPEC nations, all those sort of like Middle Eastern oil nations and everything like that, all did that. So if you were buying energy in the world, you bought it in US dollars. So what does that mean? Every country needs energy.
Right.
Every country needs energy. Every country needs to buy oil. And so if the only way to buy oil means you have to buy it in US dollars, every country has to hold strategic reserves of US dollars, which means every country has to go to the US and buy US dollars. Hence the birth of the petrodollar. That is what allows the United States to run massive deficits and have such a strong, robust currency that everyone in the world reveres, in large part because everyone in the world needs to hold US dollars. And so it started in a petrodollar, but now we see it in like almost everything that we trade in, whether it's coming from the US or not. The base price that we see, you get local currency price, like price from where you're buying it from, and you get price in USD. Anything else, you're doing the exchange rate in your head.
Got it.
Right. So that's why USD has become the standard. So why do I say this is now our currency? Well, part of what has annoyed me about the whole thing, and what generally annoys me about US media, is it can be very sophomoric at times. And like I saw when Trump announced the blockade, everyone on Twitter was like, you know, how can you blockade a blockade? And on CNN, they were like, you're blockading a blockade. That makes no sense. It's like, no. Like I have been saying it on my YouTube channel.
Yes, you have.
For weeks,
yes,
right?
You have.
There's no blockade. The Strait was open. Iran was letting people go through. It was just stopping US and Israel and ships aligned to those two countries from passage. Mm-hmm. But if you bought oil in yuan or crypto, or you decided to like pay the toll in yuan or crypto, you could move your ship.
And it didn't matter if you were a U.S. ship, a Israeli
ship.
No
U.S. ships were going to do that, right? So they didn't test that. That would have been an interesting test.
That would have been an interesting test. But in theory, had they done it, they could have.
Well, they had a 5. I don't know, right? Because I don't. They had a 5. They had a 5 nation category tier. Right? U.S. and Israel and ships like allied to them, no transit, all the way to like the most favorable terms were like from China, right? Yeah. And so it would be interesting. It would have been an interesting exercise to see if a U.S. flagged vessel that paid the toll in yuan or crypto would have been able to go through. That, you know, there was no way that a U.S. ship would be allowed to do that. That wasn't happening.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what the point of the blockade was to stop this proof of concept of settling an energy trade outside of the petrodollar system.
Got it.
Because again, right, the petrodollar system, it's the whole system. It's the currency that you're paying for. It's using the SWIFT banking network to like be able to like make the transaction, right? That's the SWIFT system is like the communication system between Western financial institutions, right? So if you ever send money around the globe, you need like SWIFT codes, and that's basically the information hub that records that Farpoint Global's JP Morgan Chase account is sending to the Construction Bank of China $5,350,000, right? The SWIFT system doesn't actually do the money transfer, it sends the information. But what that means is the US government basically, so long as the petrodollar remains supreme, the US government sees every single energy transaction and has the ability to stop any energy transaction.
What?
So Treasury basically has insight into what everyone is buying and selling using the SWIFT system. And they can go like we have done. The US has championed, right? Kicking Iran off the SWIFT system, kicking Russia off the SWIFT system, right? They'll do it. They'll cut your country off from the Western world. Now,
because they can, or
well, yeah, I mean, to protect their interests, right?
Well,
yeah, they can,
well, yeah.
to protect their interests, right? So, like, if you want to really hurt a country economically, you can cut them off from the most robust financial network in the world. Now, China, relatively recently, has developed their own SIPs, right? Which is their own way to send yuan around the world that like Russia now uses, Iran used, right?
Mhm.
And they use a separate bank in China that doesn't touch US dollars.
Mhm.
So that bank can be like sanctioned by the US. And all it does is it moves yuan around the world. What SIPS does differently than the SWIFT system is SIPS also touches the dollar transaction. So like if I am an Iranian oil executive and I need to pay someone in Russia, the yuan is basically going from Iran to China, China to Russia. Whereas like if I'm an oil executive in Texas and I'm sending a payment to Barclays Bank in London in USD, using SWIFT, the money just goes straight from the US to London.
Got it.
Because SWIFT just touches the information, SIPS touches the information and the actual coinage.
Got it.
That might be a little too like lost in the weeds or anything. But anyway.
No. It's good to know because
this is the kind of stuff that I study when I was at LSE. So I get a little lost in the weeds here. But
no, because it's one of those it is information that a lot of people don't know, but they should probably be aware of in terms of like how money is tracked or how transactions are tracked.
Right. So the blockade, right? So the point is, you're right, everyone that was critical of Trump's blockade. It is stupid to blockade a blockade.
Okay.
He wasn't blockading a blockade. What he was trying to do is shut down the proof of concept that you can buy oil and not use the petrodollar.
But did it work? Or
I mean, they're not going through. My understanding is that since it went up, we haven't had a ship transit.
I mean, but at the same time, do you worry that? And I guess we're kind of getting into a circular thing of like we don't want to get into a hot war with China.
Oh, will it last? I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't. I think what Trump would like to do is drop the blockade before China tries. Because then basically what you're going to do is, or Trump's going to have some China exception. Because at some point, China's going to want to go in and buy their oil, right? And they're going to send a Chinese flagship And God forbid they also send a Chinese destroyer to escort that ship. And, I don't think Xi wants to do that. And I don't think Trump wants to do that. I don't think either party wants to be in the position in which there's going to be an exchange of hostilities between a Chinese destroyer and an American destroyer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it starts.
So, um, again, that's why I think all of the evidence points to Trump wanting to wind this down as quickly as possible. The only what we haven't talked about, because we've been focused on Trump, we haven't talked about is I think the interests might
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
flipped for Iran.
Okay. So talk about that.
I think Iran sees themselves in a unique position in which, well, one, you have to understand the leadership of Iran has been backed into a corner,
Mm. No,
right?
they're
They are
yeah, they
facing
yeah.
death and destruction,
But they're
right?
also, I mean, you think about, and I know that you and I have been students of history. We've seen, the way that Americans are portrayed. We've, you know, it's we're not looking good. Like we just don't look good in this situation. If you're an Iranian citizen and you're looking at what America is right now, I mean, how many
Well, yeah, I mean,
school children were
that's
killed a month ago?
yeah, 120 little girls were killed.
I mean,
We've got the
fuck,
president
man.
talking about committing genocide.
Yeah,
No,
we
I
didn't
mean
even.
it's not.
I mean, I don't. I can't even bring my. I know that it was in my outline about the Easter message, but
Look, it's not. It's not. It's definitely not a good look. It's horrific. It's immoral. Uh, we lose moral authority when we behave this way, and I think one of the things that American foreign policy has been focused on for a long time is trying to have some type of moral authority and a rules based order and rules of engagement, that we are like a superpower that is only going to behave a certain way. If that means that things are a little harder for us to do, then that's fine. But like we don't bomb schools and we don't bomb hospitals, and we we will actually court martial people when they or think Abu Ghraib.
yeah.
Um, but what I mean by that, what I mean to say, like, we backed Iranian leadership in this corner is like we have given the current regime, and I'm sorry, this is the same regime as before. It's the
I,
son of the guy,
I would say
right?
it's even more hardline.
We have we have given them a lifeline.
Yeah.
They felt so threatened based on the sanctions that we had in place that they killed, some estimates I think are at 30,000 of their own people. They slaughtered 30,000 of their own people
That's
when
that
Iranians were in the
sounds about
streets
right.
protesting,
Yeah,
right?
that's the number that I've heard reported. I mean,
And what we did was we gave them a lifeline by now that they are the defenders of Iran.
yeah.
So what happened at first, what we failed to realize at first, I think, was if we go in and we start striking and we expect immediately the IRGC members and the current regime to lay down their arms, that wasn't going to happen because they'd be killed.
Yeah.
Because if they weren't going to be killed by Americans and Israelis, they were going to be killed by Iranians because they
Oh yeah,
just
they were.
slaughtered a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So they weren't about to like lay down their arms, right? Because it was either the American and Israelis were going to kill them or their own citizenry were going to kill them. So they had to fight. I think now we're at a place where, you see Iranian women, encircling power plants so that the US and Israeli forces don't bomb power plants. Because you know what happens when you bomb power plants? Babies on incubators die, right? People starve in the darkness,
People, I mean,
right?
ventilators,
So,
yeah. I mean, people need power.
shockingly, what we
People
did,
need
right?
power, like
We
electricity.
we Yeah, we
is not just it is I would say it is an essential need.
yeah. So what we have done is we have, weakened the current Iranian regime militarily, of course. We have significantly degraded their military capabilities,
Yeah,
which
but
like shouldn't shock anyone. Like we're the United States of America, and Iran had a very strong and powerful military, but like nowhere near the US. It shouldn't surprise
right.
anyone that we were able to
Right.
like sink their ships, like shoot down their airplanes, right? Like,
I mean,
they're
but they
not.
still have their drone factories, if
I
I'm
mean, they still have drone. Like the thing is, right? Like
I'm
you
not I'm
have
and
to
I'm not defending. I'm just saying.
no, but like they have a lot of really cheap military assets, which are
Yeah.
very easy to like build, but cost a lot to destroy.
Yes.
And so the one thing I got into someone on my YouTube channel because they were commenting below um, about like the mismatch in dollars between our like defensive interceptors versus these drones.
I'm gonna be
And I'm like,
100%
well,
honest. I think I've actually read that thread and
okay.
really
And my
tried
point
not
was
to get
like,
in the
you
comments.
have to. My opinion is the interceptor value needs to be judged on what you are protecting, not by what you are intercepting.
Yeah.
So to me, you're going to use a $10 million interceptor to protect a civilian high rise. Worth it, of course. Even though that missile or even though that drone was only 50 grand. No, that's worth it because your goal in the interceptor is not to destroy the drone. It is to protect the asset,
Yeah.
right? It's to protect lives or infrastructure or this and that. But my point is like there is a little bit of this like asymmetry in the type of warfare being waged. But that being said, like I do think like it is undeniable that we have greatly degraded their military. That doesn't mean that they don't. That doesn't mean like oh because they shot down an F-15, like we suck. No, it's like,
No, no, and I wouldn't say
F-15's
that at
flying
all. I
low.
mean,
All it takes is one missile to get through,
yeah.
and it hits that F-15. But like we also then just like went into Iran and got the guy out, which was like amazing.
Well, and if I'm not
Right.
mistaken, there was a big shootout that went with it too.
Well, yeah, I mean they laid down suppressive fire when they were going to get the guy, because that's what we do. We're America. That's what we do. We don't leave someone behind.
Well, no, 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 but I no, I agree with that. We don't leave people behind, but like I mean like I remember reading about it, listening to a couple of podcasts about it, and like almost everybody I listened to or read was like, this is going to be made into a movie.
Oh, I mean, for sure, it's gonna be made into America.
But like
For sure.
it's gonna be made into like an America rah rah movie, and like and they're totally gonna miss like the nuance.
Well, it is an American rah-rah movie, no?
But they're gonna miss the nuance, like
What's the nuance? What am
the
I missing? What nuance am I missing?
I think it's that like maybe we shouldn't have done it in the first place.
Oh, maybe. But I mean, like,
Or
yeah,
let me just say
I
it
but I
this way,
think you can
as
be.
somebody who doesn't like armed conflict, we probably wouldn't. We shouldn't have done it in the first fucking place. Um,
No, I think it was a strategic error. Us launching this strike. I I was like a fan of like what we did over the summer, and I think my
hmm.
thing kind of would have been like, look, Iran, you know, if you don't comply, I'm just gonna keep sending over B-2 bombers and blowing your shit up. Right? Every single time I think you get close, I'm gonna send some B-2 bombers over there and I'm gonna blow your shit up. And I'm gonna leave. And I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna blow up some more shit and I'm gonna leave. You know? Um, you know, limited strike, you tell them what you're gonna do and how you're gonna do it, and that's just and you watch them like a freaking hawk. And you keep sanctioning them and sanctioning them and sanctioning them. And, hope that at some point the Iranian people rise up and overthrow their regime. and you are there to offer any support to the new democratically elected leader of Iran. And you try and normalize relations with Iran. You try and lead a normalization of relationships between Iran and Saudi Arabia and Iran and Israel. And you try and, rope them into the Abraham Accords and do all that stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, we didn't do that
No, no, not
because
even in the
we
slightest.
miscalculated the we miscalculated the if we were actually at the tipping point. Right. I mean, I really think what Israeli intelligence was telling the Trump administration and what the Trump administration's hope was. But it seems like from reading the New York Times article, our intelligence didn't necessarily align with Israel's. But
Which is something
the
I would love
hope
to talk to you
was
about on a more on a level, maybe not on this episode, but like,
sure. But like I think what the hope was like, we're at the tipping point now.
yeah,
We've had these long sanctions. They're mastering their people in the streets. Very similar to like a Venezuela thing. You're going to go in 2 3 days. You're going to take out a bunch of these people, bomb some military things. There's going to be a coup. Someone maybe in part of the IRGC is going to splinter off, blah, blah, blah. And then we're there to like offer support to whoever the new leader is.
right, right. I mean,
Right.
if I remember
That was
correctly,
the plan.
yeah, yeah. Like they were hoping it was gonna go much more like the Venezuela thing with Maduro, if I
Right.
remember
We took
correctly.
Maduro out. We put in the VP, and now the VP basically knows if you don't play ball with us, we'll take you out and we'll replace you with someone else, and you'll rot in a jail in the United States.
Which, again, I think that's a different episode for us to talk about.
That's gonna be a fun one because I think we disagree a lot on that
I think we're gonna disagree a lot on that one. Yeah, dude. Um,
one. My inner neocon is gonna come out.
oh, you know what? I love it. The fact that I know that that I can still tell you that I love you at the end of an
But look,
episode.
I mean, this is the thing is, and the thing that bugs me the most. Like I was watching the Hegseth conference today, news conference today, and he was talking about the press who's like disagreeing with the Trump administration are kind of like the Pharisees. And it's just like
What?
no.
I've been in my
Oh,
studio
you
all day today.
okay? So you need to. I'll send you the YouTube link after this. But we all should be able to disagree, and if we can't be it doesn't make me like anti-American to think that the way we executed this most likely was a mistake. And it's like every day it goes on, the more and more I think it was a mistake. Like I famously was at a dinner party the evening of the strikes.
Okay.
And so all everyone was talking about at this dinner party was the strikes. And some people were like turning to me and asking me because, uh,
Respect
I'm
your
although
opinion.
I am deeply involved in geopolitics because I've got clients and we have interests all over the globe.
And
We're
you're the
talking to all
man.
kinds of people. Thank you. But I know, and I just said to them, far too early to know whether this was a good idea or a bad idea.
That's a measured take.
Like, and my thing was like, I hope that this is great. Like I hope that this is like a Venezuela. Like the regime they're evil. They are bad. They are bad people. I mean, they just got done massacring their own citizens in the street. Like, no, they should be removed from power. My preference would be they removed from power and they like face trial within their own country and da, 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 but like they should be removed, right? They wish ill to our allies, right? They wish ill to people that we have defense pacts with and we trade with, and we're like, there we are not on the same side, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that doesn't mean that any action you take against them is rational, just, or smart. And so it does seem like there was a real hope that this would go really, really well. And there was not a plan if it didn't go according to plan.
Yeah, okay. Let me just say this. I do feel like they only had plan A. There wasn't a plan B, C, D, all the way to Z. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
there's
there
no way
weren't
they thought
contingencies.
that the Strait of Hormuz would be closed for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no way.
And this
And
is why
I
you sent me
am,
that picture of gas costing and Nico
yeah,
and Nico will put this up on the because I couldn't figure out a way to put it up in our actual episode. But this is why gas is $5.19 for
yeah.
just regular, although the Rossi itself takes premium, so she's at $6 a gallon basically.
Well, luckily, I mean, I got a Tesla, so I don't have to deal with that.
But I thought you were shopping for that Aston Martin, bro.
I mean that's for another conversation. That's true, but like luckily the golf course isn't that far away.
Lucky for you. Yeah. Oh, by the way, well, and before we wrap, we'll wrap, and I think I talked to you about the golf course. No, no. Let me ask you this. Um, before we wrap, how can Americans make sure their dollars go further, especially since we are looking at a potential recession?
Look, I think it really depends on who you are and your economic situation. Um, if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed for an extended period of time, we will go into a recession. What a recession means is people lose jobs, which means it gets hard to put food on the table, which means people get evicted, which means people are living on the streets, which means people die. Like a recession is not like, oh, we just had like a down, we had a down 2 quarters. Like recession affects a lot of Americans very deeply. If you have the ability to like tighten your belt to make yourself a little more secure for the next couple months, um, I think that is a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the money to like take the nice family vacation and be out of a job for 6 months, like don't take the nice family vacation. Um, but then of course there's a trickle on effect because you not taking the nice family vacation means that, the hotel isn't making as much money, which means that the hotel's not maybe lays off a couple, it all has these like real, I mean, that's the horrible
There's a
thing
whole
about
ripple
recessions,
effect.
right?
Yeah.
I think the most important thing for all of us to do is to be as educated about what is happening surrounding Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, the US, and China as possible, and not being siloed into where we normally get our news. This is an international story with many sides.
Mm-hmm.
Just watching Fox News or just watching CNN or just reading the New York Times is not going to be enough. Look for very smart people that seem to be very measured in their analysis. Build a feed of as many of those people as you possibly can and start doing a lot of reading. And then reach out to your elected representatives and let them know that you are demanding change. Because the people that really can start letting our administration know that we really need to look at how to safely wind this down. I'm not saying just pack up and leave overnight, but like safely wind this down, right? Those are our elected officials.
Yeah.
That's the point of our system of government, that we can contact our representatives and let them know how we feel. and tell them that, like, they will have our support if they go and do something that might be viewed unpopular by the rest of the party. I mean, I'll just put it simply, right? I mean, if everyone in Congress, right, felt like they were empowered to pass some type of resolution to start, like, really putting pressure on the executive branch to, like, wind this shit down,
Yeah.
um, the executive branch would listen. The only silver lining that I think actually exists is I do think that, like, Trump does want to wind this down. And it doesn't seem like he's being, as a whole, it doesn't seem like he's being incredibly reckless by exiting. He could have just already left by now. Like, he does
Yeah, no, he could
look to
have.
see, like, at least he's looking to get something. Now, I just hope that this something is more than what we had before we started this thing. That doesn't necessarily mean we should have done it this way. There's probably a bunch of different ways to get whatever that end goal was. But, like, we should at least try to get something more than what we had before. But I do think if we have to settle for basically net zero or even a small little licking, it is probably better for America in the medium to long run to do that
Yeah.
than to not. And I think Trump has an amazing opportunity to build a rapport with Xi Jinping over resolving this issue. He's got a meeting coming up with President Xi. President Xi, of course, would like to see an end to these hostilities. Trump would like to see an end to these hostilities. And Trump is unique in the fact that he can basically sell his base on anything.
See, that is true. He can. Like, he
And
is
so my hope is the
a
deal
master
maker of
manipulator.
Trump, my hope is the deal maker of Trump realizes that there is a larger opportunity here, to perhaps normalize some type of relations with Iran, with China's help, and bring this war to an end. And in the end, global trade will thrive. Prices will correct. It's not Brent, like, unlike most costs of goods, when they elevate because of a tariff, it's hard to sort of, like, bring them down if the tariff is elevated for so long. The nature of oil is, like, if we resolve this in the next 2 or 3 weeks, Brent will come down.
Right.
For sure.
Because if I remember correctly, oil is the most profitable in terms of its tradable commodity. And I'm throwing a shitload of terms around, but its
It's
margin
got a
is,
band.
yeah, at 80 to $100, right?
Right. Because much more than that, people, like, there's a risk that people stop buying.
Right.
Too low, you're not making a lot because it's going to cost you maybe 30, $40 a barrel to make. You
Right.
want to be in that sweet spot where people are buying a lot, right? And you're still making a lot. So it will, if we get this thing open again, right, the prices will come down. We'll walk back from the risk of a recession, and there would be a chance to start to normalize relations. And I really hope that that's what happens.
I really hope it is too. And honestly, uh, having you as one of the intelligent people I listen to every day is a absolute blessing. Um, I love
Well,
you.
I appreciate it. That's very kind. Thank you. Love you too.
All right. Well, before I start gushing, um, I think that's what I got.
That's good.
So,
It's a wrap.
yeah, man, let's wrap it. Nico, this has been Hoosier Homies with CEO of Farpoint Global, Myles Lewis Alexander, frequent friend of the podcast and frequent guest. Looking forward to having you on next time.
Anytime.
Always good to see you, buddy. Thanks again for watching Hoosier Homies. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hoosier Homies is created, written, and directed by Benjamin C. Lawson. Produced by Nico Anas. Edited by Nico Anas. Special thanks to Myles Lewis Alexander, CEO of Farpoint Global. Hoosier Homies is a Black Hat White Hat production, LLC.